savais que je devais parler espagnol.
C'était qui avec la fille en Suisse?
Zelensky, Harris meeting after. Harris meeting.
Ouais, je sais, j'ai vu des gens qui attendaient pour faire des pilotes. Les mecs qui sont là.
Make it worthwhile.
Ah mon dieu, le téléphone là.
Hello. A quick word for the press. What do you expect from this summit? Why do you think it's important to be here, to be represented here?
What are your message?
You want to say something?
No,
Why is it important to be here?
Moi, je pense qu'il va y avoir pas mal de...
C'est un des G7.
C'est là,
One from G7. Bah ça dépend.
J'imagine.
C'est Mexique. Ouais. Je dis Mexique.
Non, c'est une nana pour
Sao
Mexique.
Tomé.
Mal barré.
Bon. J'ai fait de mon mieux. C'est clair. Mais par contre, c'est méga dur.
Excuse me, what do you wait from this peace summit? What do you try to achieve here?
Peace.
What else? What else?
Stop.
Stop? Stop.
Ou encore.
Oh.
Oh, mais quelque chose.
Oui, avoir un. Je dirais, mais ça revient.
What is it? Quoi?
Oh, d'accord, ok, c'est les photographes qui s'emballent.
With the flag!
With the flag! Flag! Take the flag!
Macédoine.
C'est quoi ce drapeau? Ah, Équateur.
Non, non,
Voilà,
non,
parfait,
non.
ça c'est parfait. Ça.
C'est parfait, on sait toujours pas qui c'est, mais c'est...
Franchement, il ferait tout ça, je serais pas emmerdé.
Ouais, c'est ça. Ouais, c'est pas là-haut.
C'est le sillon du Palau.
D'accord. Well, at least it's up to us.
Ah, il y a qui?
Ah, ok.
On y va? Bah, c'est la fin. Monsieur Gassis, s'il vous plaît, un petit mot, s'il vous plaît, monsieur Gassis.
What would your message for Putin?
Comment se déroule cette journée?
Soyez tous et toutes les bienvenus. J'espère qu'on fera un pas dans la bonne direction.
Est-ce que ça avance, les négociations de la déclaration finale?
Oui.
Il avait un gros loulou là qui dépassait. Excuse-moi.
Comment il parle?
Je suis obligé de
Ça doit être la télé suisse.
Sérieux?
Très bien.
Because we want to support Ukraine in many ways.
Il va falloir faire le tri un peu.
C'est facile, on va te poser les questions ensuite.
Allez, c'est d'accord.
Hello, one question. Why do you think it's important to be here? 100 countries.
Mais en fait, il faudrait que quelqu'un nous soit la place.
Yesterday I met
So no, why do you think it's important to be here? For you to be here.
Je crois qu'elle a dit non. Moi, je suis n'importe quoi.
un photobombe, tu vois.
On lui parle en français?
Ouais. Comment il se salue?
On est sûr que c'est Ouattara? Ouais. Monsieur le Président, un petit mot, Ouattara. Un mot.
Ça va?
C'est important pour vous d'être ici.
Comment ça va? Tu vas bien?
Alors,
J'ai vu ton papa il n'y a pas longtemps.
ah bah voilà, je savais bien.
Voilà.
Pourquoi c'est important pour l'Afrique d'être représenté?
Salutations à la famille.
Le scoop. J'ai vu ton papa. Mais pourquoi?
Parce que mon père était diplomate en Afrique.
Ah oui, d'accord. Ah bah ça aide.
J'ai vu ton
Mais
papa.
ça, on va le mettre dans un blog.
Attends, je crois que c'est le meilleur sonore qu'on a jusqu'à maintenant. Donc, crache pas dessus, hein, parce que.
On va peut-être devoir
J'ai vu ton papa il n'y a pas trop
Tu veux pas le
longtemps.
mettre en même, parce qu'il est bien celui-là.
Ah ouais, c'est incroyable.
Je pense que j'ai peut-être même tes cheveux sur tes pieds, on doit même te voir dans le cou.
Je sais pas, c'est pas.
One more, a quick one for the press.
101, 101, il a dit.
que des gens qui sont pas des high level. Qui c'est qui a eu le temps de rigoler toute la liste des gens qu'on a reçus?
Yes. Sorry to say that a while ago.
Non,
No, the black.
I'm here for the Zimbabwe. C'est qu'ils ont envoyé la part celui qu'on a vu. C'est qui arrive
so we
là-bas.
can be fairly sure that was haram.
Ah, c'est ceux qui sont passés déjà.
Passer dans un sens et passer dans l'autre.
Non, de près on entend bien que c'est suisse. Hein.
Is this going Timor-Leste?
Oh yes, it's free.
I remember and I just
Timor-Leste, il parle quelle langue?
maybe. Mais non, je l'avais dans mes images. Non.
Faut sortir le week-end, non?
T'es jaloux.
Tu connaissais pas la langue non plus.
Avec des présidents.
Ou avoir un papa qui le fait. Hi. Quick word for the press. How do you think things are going? How do you see peace? How are things going?
How do you see peace? What is your message for Putin?
Come and talk.
Why is it important to be there? Why is it important for you to be there?
What chances?
I was invited and I came.
As Nobel Peace Prize winner.
No, I'm not.
Yeah, you used to be.
I'm not.
You used to be
Our
prime
No,
minister.
I'm not.
President Orta was Prime Minister Chemin.
Do you want to stop the war
Yeah, I know.
here today? Do you want countries to stop the war?
Of course.
Sir,
Why Timor-Leste could be an example on the process
Écoutez,
for Ukraine.
franchement, je suis votre meilleure caution pour les honneurs aujourd'hui.
I was invited and I came. Ok, mais merci, c'est nous pour le buffet.
Il y en a un qui parle là-bas au bout là.
Il y en a un qui parle là. Non, à droite là. Ouais, c'est Blinken. Robin, oui.
Et madame, pourriez-vous bouger un peu? C'est qui cette dame?
Il y a un autre qui parle là, cette télé. Non, là. Il parle beaucoup quand même. Il parle à Jenny. Ouais, mais Jenny.
Fiji.
Kate.
Thank you guys.
Quick word, Mr. Harris. Just quick word, how are things going?
I think today is a very important development. The fact that 91 countries or thereabouts have come together at probably the highest level international gathering since the war in Ukraine began. So I think that in and of itself is important. The fact that we're gathering here this weekend to talk about peace and to talk about the process of peace. Any peace process has to be in compliance with international law, has to be in line with the UN Charter. That's always the position that Ireland will advocate. But also alongside peace and peace processes, I think there's also a need to look at the immediate, to look at the fact that we have seen around 20,000 Ukrainian children effectively abducted from their families, from their communities and from their country. How terrifying a thing is that to say? And how can the world in any way, shape or form turn its back on that reality? When did it become in any manner or means acceptable for children to be a weapon of war? Apart from the fact that it is utterly illegal, it is morally repugnant. And I'm looking forward to having an opportunity at some breakout sessions tomorrow to explore that further and explore what steps the international community can take to support children who right now are being used as weapons of war by the Russians.
Teacher, how do you resolve that situation?
Well, I think it's important that in the first instance we call it out. I'm not sure how many people across the world know that that is the reality, that around 20,000 children have been stolen from their parents, stolen from their families. And I think then we need to look at all of the mechanisms and levers available to try and apply pressure to Russia in relation to that, and also what countries might be best placed to play an intermediary role as well. Because while there is a need for a peace process, of course there's a need for the territorial integrity of Ukraine to be respected in all scenarios. There is also the fact that children are being snatched from their parents in the here and now, and the expectation from my reading of the situation is that that is only likely to increase as the summer months approach. When you hear disgusting, repugnant references to vacation programs to Russia, this is the stealing of children, and it's about time the international community calls it out, and I for one intend to do that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, guys.
Ça c'est qui?
Tu leur dis dans le live qu'il faut y aller.
Yeah, we hadn't interrupted you.
No.
Sir, one walk, please. Where with the press? How are things going?
We just arrived, actually. You know.
What do you expect? What do you expect?
Progress. We are hoping for progress. Move forward towards peace.
Do you think it's a possibility without Russia?
It's a start of a conversation that needs to be taken. Yeah, I think it is. Can only be a positive move. Hopefully we can get Russia to join later on, yes. That must be their goal.
Iceland.
C'était pas mal, il parle notamment du cas des enfants qui ont été volés entre Russes. C'est un problème, mais faut que ce sera trop long. Bah, moi je sais pas, hein. Je te transmets le message.
Non mais ouais, on verra.
Après la qualité elle est peut-être pas bonne.
Sir?
On essaie.
True?
Ah, j'ai pris le train, j'ai fait, mais tu rentres. Ça marche bien ton live là? Ouais. Non, je veux dire en stream pas parce que j'ai un problème de train. Il y a pas de problème de train, donc je me dis que la qualité doit pas être. Ah, t'as regardé ta mise de carte que moi j'adore porter de la vue comme ça dans le dos. Ça me... Ah ouais, moi j'ai plus de. J'ai pris mon câble de rouge. Il regarde le live là.
Вам запишуть.
Добре.
L'Afrique. L'Afrique, le pays. Mais alors, c'est vrai. C'est un peu compliqué. Ah, mais dans le catch.
Some development for peace.
What's your main position here?
C'est le pape.
Caracoïnidis. C'est un pays que je
Sir, one word, please.
Why is it important to be here?
Président. Putain. Quel mépris.
Et là. Ouais, c'est chiant en fait.
President, yes, no,
For Ukrainian children. Monsieur Reinders, un petit mot pour l'AFP, s'il vous plaît.
What's your main message? Mr. De Groot.
Comment ça se passe?
Mais très bien, je crois qu'on va essayer de se concentrer sur les thèmes principaux, sécurité nucléaire, sécurité alimentaire, mais aussi, je crois que c'est très important, les échanges de prisonniers et le retour des enfants. Je crois que c'est un des thèmes majeurs, c'est de voir comment on peut, avec des États qui pourraient intervenir, obtenir enfin un résultat et faire revenir des enfants déportés.
Est-ce que c'est possible?
C'est possible en tout cas de voir quels sont les partenaires qui pourraient jouer un rôle, l'organisation internationale comme pays qui pourrait participer à des démarches. Je crois qu'elle a un vrai souci où tout le monde doit comprendre qu'il s'agit d'un problème de droits de l'homme évident en matière d'échange de prisonniers bien sûr, mais certainement de retour des enfants.
C'est la dernière fois sur la Russie.
Campagne pour le Conseil de l'Europe.
Tout est important.
Donc les enfants et ce qu'on
C'est l'Irlandais, non?
Vraiment, monsieur Marc.
Why is it important for Africa to participate? Why is it important?
How are you guys?
We are fine.
How are you?
He said. Not anymore. No. Oh là là. Bon, c'est pas mal, hein. Quand on connaît les noms, quand on connaît les noms, c'est mieux.
Malheureusement pour moi, il y avait deux cours en même temps. Du coup, il y a des gens qui ne peuvent pas faire une vidéo. Non, mais t'as vu, de toute façon, quoi. Et il a dit non, non, de toute façon, lui, il voulait parler notamment qui sont là.
Ouais, mais je reste pas les gars, je vais pas nous. Non, mais c'est bon.
Calme-toi. On va gueuler. T'as faim? Tu veux un petit chocolat? Non. T'as peur que tu tiendras jusqu'à la barre? Les deux soldats. Les zooms. Ouais, mais en fait c'est la meuf avec son téléphone là.
Ah, c'est le président portugais.
Ah ouais, voilà. Excuse me with the phone, do you mind? Yes, thank you. No, lower the mic, lower the mic.
Pourquoi c'est important pour le plan?
Vamos ainda agora para a ação inaugural. Alors, on arrive.
On arrive.
Ah, c'est encore commencé.
Ne bougez pas, je reviens.
Ouais, grave.
On peut passer, vas-y, crois.
Je vais chercher des clopes, jamais revenu.
Non, mais c'est.
Alors là, c'est les millennials qui au téléphone. Les quoi? Les millennials qui sont au téléphone, il y en a pas un. J'avoue. Regarde pas ce qu'il fait. Enfin, c'est triste, 2024. Personne ne sait pas. Wow. C'est très bizarre comme question. A word for Ukraine children. Bah voilà, c'est pas compliqué quand même.
Par contre, je connais pas son nom.
Bah vas-y, hein.
S'il te plaît.
Eminenza, cosa ci vuole per una pace giusta?
Risponderò dopo, aspetta che cominciamo. Cosa si aspetta, segretario?
Ah, voilà derrière le...
Oula, bah maintenant nous avons les orthodoxes. Oula, carrément. On va avoir les bouddhistes après qui vont arriver. C'est vraiment une heure très très longue.
Toi, tu iras en enfer direct.
I will answer later.
I see.
We're here for it, so just wait for it.
C'est moi. Non, c'est pas toi. Bon, je viens de me faire avec le téléphone en fait.
What is your main message in this event?
What is your expectation?
Peace.
Bah on peut faire dans toutes les langues. Peace, pace, oh là 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 là.
Non, mais c'est vrai. On a eu plus de gens que les autres.
Non, mais tu vois, quand deux personnes pour faire ça, tu t'en fais tellement à Bruxelles que
j'ai zéro complexe.
Moi, je les sors connus, Le type, c'est ce qui marchait. Et quand était le seul mot qui criait avec une voix féminine alors qu'il dit tout, il beuglait comme des gens. Il a fait toujours ça. Oui, bah tu passes dans les machins là, c'est obligé de marcher. Ils auraient dû faire un truc en...
Ah, c'est une dame en vue.
C'est Viola encore?
Non, une dame avec des cheveux très
Bah du coup ça reste Viola comme une des... Non, ça elle est un peu sinistre. Ça non. Est-ce qu'ils ont le choix de ne pas passer par là ou pas?
Je pense non. Mais ils ont le choix de ne pas nous parler. Hein.
Non, oui, ça ouais, ça c'est sûr. Je l'ai bien vu.
C'est pas les Danemark qui mettaient machin. Ouais, c'est pas une chambre. La fille. C'est ce que j'ai dit.
Moi je fais
l'Union Européenne, les amis. Hein. Ne vous inquiétez pas.
On te fait confiance.
C'était une fois par ministre, non?
Ah oui, c'est...
Non, maintenant
Mr. Prime Minister, what is Danish position for today? What is Danish position?
How
force Putin to reach peace? How we can push Putin?
Well, you can only find a peaceful solution if you have two partners who seeks the peace and who wants the peace. And unfortunately, Russia and Putin does not want the peace. Ukraine wants peace, And now we are almost 100 countries supporting a peaceful solution to this conflict. So I think it's an important event. It's important for Ukraine, it's important for the entire world, because we need peace in Ukraine, and at the same time we need Russia to respect and to accept democracy, and Russia is not stronger than the European democracies.
What about the option by Vladimir Putin about keeping the occupied territories?
I don't think it's a serious. It's not serious what we see from Russia, unfortunately.
Would Denmark be interested in hosting the follow-up conference?
What is your message for Putin from this conference?
Ouais, parce que ça ressemble. C'était le Tchèque, non? Non, il m'a passé le Tchèque. Slovaquie, oui, ça ressemble. C'est ça, hein, c'est celui-là. Hein. T'as pris un thé, ils en offraient à la délégation russe, t'as pas
Que je bois jamais quand je vais à l'ambassade russe.
Ah non. Alors moi c'est mieux, j'y vais pas.
Et je prends pas mes portables.
Oui, alors, je me disais Benjamin la dernière fois, il m'a dit que j'étais le seul à laisser le portable dans le bagnole, tout le monde était là, on se connectait au wifi à la salle.
Yok, merdivenle. Ya kimi oturacaksın abi? Merdivenle ya, ben söylemedim. Asansör çok kokar.
Seni kokar.
Voilà, il y a un boîte de du petit Mike. J'appelle la Croix-Rouge.
Oula, il y a un gros groupe là. Alors, le marine, elle s'est pas changée, notre photo?
Bien. Toi, t'es suisse, là, non?
Non. C'était still in blue.
Ah, ok, donc il y aura bien plus là.
The phone, please. Thank you.
Non, pas là.
Ouais, mais je sais pas qui est le leader de ce groupe. C'est pas la dame qui est terrible, là. Il y a plusieurs c'est la dame petite, là. On dit non,
Je mettrai dans ma carte, mais...
Non, c'est elle. Il est partout, je pense.
C'est pas où, par contre?
If we don't know. Non, et puis c'est là, on a quelques têtes qui sont pas là.
Hi. What do you hope achieving today?
Good afternoon, everyone. It's wonderful to be in Switzerland to join leaders from almost 100 countries to voice our support for Ukraine, to voice our support for the people of Ukraine who have lit up a fire that no tyranny from Russia will ever be able to extinguish. I'm honored to be here on behalf of the people of the Republic of Kosovo and represent my country in making sure that we make steps forward towards not just peace as a concept in itself, but towards just peace. Because justice is always a precondition to reconciliation, to long-term peace. And we have been doing everything we can to support Ukraine. And it is important that, except for saying that we should be with Ukraine for as long as it takes, we should also say that we should be with Ukraine with whatever it takes. We should give them all of the support necessary, because that is not just their fight. All of us in Europe and beyond are at stake here. For the sake of peace and security, and for the principle of a Europe whole, free and at peace, we should stand together and absolutely not give up. This is not a fight for only months or days. This is a fight for the sake of Europe.
Are you afraid of destabilization in Europe on other countries by Russia?
This is exactly what Russia wants, and obviously since the invasion of Ukraine and since the aggression against Ukraine, Russia has been trying to have a spillover effect in other countries, and not just in that region, but also they are looking for what they call fertile grounds, mostly non-NATO territories. Unfortunately, the Russian malign influence is growing also in the Western Balkans through other countries, not the Republic of Kosovo, and we've been trying to fight it. We need the support of the European Union and other countries, like-minded countries and democracies, so that we can stop this malign influence, because there's never a vacuum. Those who want to influence in a malign way never allow for a vacuum. So we need to make sure that all of our part as the Western Balkans is within NATO, because to be in NATO means to be safe, and that we make certain important steps towards European integration.
What concrete steps do you expect?
Membership in the European Union as well as NATO is fundamental to have a peaceful, a stable and a prosperous Western Balkans. And a Europe whole, free and at peace, as I mentioned earlier, absolutely the people of Ukraine have shown that they stand for the values which are the very fundament of the European Union. President Putin is not interested in peace. President Putin stands for everything that is against peace, against stability, and against good neighborly relations. It's extremely important
first you should
that
accept the
we
invitation.
unanimously reject.
I think he made a mistake not being here. This whole process started a year ago with 14, 15 national security advisors, and here we are today with half of the UN at the leaders level in many cases of many countries. And he is preparing for a state visit to North Korea. So this is your story. Yeah.
And what about China's absence?
I think it's a step-by-step approach. And the good thing of this conference is that we have over 90 countries present here, that we will discuss some crucial issues like food security, nuclear security, but also how to reunite families. So all these humanitarian issues. So we'll take it from here. And the fact that we grew from about 15 security advisors a year ago to over 90 countries now is testimony of where we are. And the fact that Putin yesterday came out with this silly peace proposal shows you that he is clearly panicking. So that's good news.
Besides the family picture, because you'll be probably the next SG.
I u tretmanu onih koji su doživjeli traume u tom procesu agresije. Prema tome Hrvatska pomaže maksimalno, pomaže budući da nema Rusije, možemo li očekivati konkretne stvari od ovog samita to je naravno prvi korak. Ovisno onima koji su to treba pristaniti, sami kako su izjave koji se zadnje dva. Hvala lijepa. Would you like me to answer?
Yeah, just a quick one. Realistically, what kind of progress can be made towards peace without Russia?
Well, first of all, I think it's excellent. There are 100 delegations plus the international organizations, and I believe that this is the first step towards the peace process.
Madam President, please look at us.
Thank you very much.
So that this message of peace can be heard as well as in Moscow. Unfortunately, the recent statements that were made were not very encouraging, because the just peace entails also that Russia withdraws from the temporarily occupied territories of Ukraine.
And will Russia be invited to the next talks, next stage?
If we go in the good directions and conditions are ripe, why not? Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Prime Minister, please.
I know it's a bit annoying, but I started from no, I can be really relaxed when they
text also said he would be a good one.
Yeah, okay, but I think von der Leyen, that would be more interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. At one point, if they were at the same time.
C'est quoi ça?
Okay, if you're not filming people, just put your phone inside, please. Thank you.
Salomé, là?
No.
Un peu comme ça pour le dos.
Ouais, tu peux.
Ouais, voilà.
Non, bah, de toute façon, je sais pas. Je suis désolée, parce que c'est pas prévoir de plus quand il va prendre un vote pour un peu de nuit. Il n'était pas encore parti de Paris, donc...
On est venu ici pour
C'est awkward.
Ils ne se rendent pas compte de le rythme du truc ici. Non, c'est juste une question après. Il va arriver, ça sera déjà fini. First slide, micro.
And then he's like, do stick.
Attends, nous avons négocié pour
Non, it's just that.
Oui, mais micro tourné.
For the second one. Yeah.
Ça sert derrière le slide.
Dis-lui que tous les présidents me répondent. Ils sont en train de me répondre. Ça va bien. J'ai dit que tous les présidents européens me répondent. Mais moi, elle m'a pas répondu, quoi.
Is anyone editing this? We're going to edit it.
Really?
Yeah. I said if we didn't be major flag and making it.
Okay. Do you mind checking the live view while it's really good stream? Checking if the stream is okay. How much does it say? 3? 3? No, I mean not the battery, the stream. 3 something?
Yeah, 3.5.
Only 300?
3,000.
3,000, okay, perfect. Amazing. Thank you. Ça va te faire virer.
Alors, il y a quelqu'un qui arrive. Hein.
Ok.
Je sais pas.
Non, c'est...
J'imagine.
Bon, c'est pas
Ça, c'est tous les monsieur.
Sorry?
Are there 3? Only 2.
Je suis sûr que c'est un truc comme ça, c'est la fête du tourisme.
Plus the Wi-Fi.
Ah ouais, bah ça c'est elle. Tu connais son nom?
Ça sent Maghreb.
C'est un Bercy qui rentre ici.
T'as une petite obsession avec Versailles quand
Oui,
même,
complètement.
Jérémy. Il va falloir soigner ça. Hein.
Hi, how are you?
Hi.
C'est l'Égypte, ça.
Ouais, mais je ne sais pas qui c'est.
L'Europe, ça ne sait plus. L'Europe ne sait plus.
A quick word for the press. How are things going? Yeah, what do you expect of today?
I'm the president of Slovenia. This is the first step towards the just peace in Ukraine. And I think it's very important, and I would like to congratulate Switzerland to gather here representatives of the 90 countries, 57 heads of states and prime minister. This is a huge achievement. And to be honest, I'm looking for the second peace conference, which is going to be more concrete, and more voices need to be heard. And I think that the next conference should definitely not be without Russia. We have to talk to the enemy. We cannot negotiate peace between like-minded countries. So that's the next step I think that most of us would like to achieve here.
So what do you think China is not coming?
That's why you would have to ask China. I mean, you know that geopolitical situation is now quite hectic. Russia is lobbying inside the circle of their like-minded countries. But I think that China's position is towards peace as well. We have different starting positions. That's why the discussion with China is also needed and necessary.
Thank you very much.
Persuade Russia to join this process?
That's probably $1 million question. But also Russia knows that if Russia wants peace, they have to talk to Ukraine. My standpoint is that the peace negotiations should not start without Ukraine. That's the focus of European Union. And we have to listen to Ukraine. What's their wish, their goal? And we need to support Ukraine to reach that goal.
What do you think of the offer of Russia about keeping the occupied territories?
Pardon? What?
Keeping the occupied territories. That's what Vladimir Putin said.
That's out of the question. I am a lawyer. You have to understand my position being a lawyer as well.
Monsieur Michel?
The main message is we are not intimidated and we are absolutely determined to uphold the rule of law, to defend the UN Charter, because these are fundamental principles. And that's why we are here. And it is very good that nearly 100 delegations are represented here, because we understand what's at stake. It's not only the security in Europe, it's much more than that. We know that the Ukrainians, they are fighting for the future, but they are also fighting for some common fundamental principles.
La photo de famille, ça veut dire après 12 ans, est-ce que vous espérez achieve something else?
Vous voulez que je réponde en français?
Non. Oui, ce que je veux dire, à part la photo de famille, qu'est-ce qu'on peut attendre ici?
Non, il y a d'abord une déclaration qui va être exprimée. Cette déclaration est un pas important. Pourquoi? Parce que c'est un pas qui indique que les délégations qui sont rassemblées, elles croient, elles ont foi dans la Charte des Nations Unies et ses principes fondamentaux. Et ce n'est pas quelque chose de mineur, c'est quelque chose de très substantiel. Pourquoi? Parce que si toutes ces nations dans le monde peuvent vivre ensemble avec des objectifs de paix, de sécurité, de prospérité, de respect de la dignité humaine, c'est parce qu'il y a cette charte fondamentale des Nations Unies qui a été aussi le fruit de drames qui ont ensanglanté le monde et singulièrement le continent européen au siècle passé. C'est un premier point. Donc réaffirmer cette foi et cette détermination, c'est extrêmement important. Premier point. Et puis deuxième point, nous sommes déterminés avec les pays représentés à ne pas baisser les yeux et au contraire à traiter des sujets qui sont très concrets, qui touchent aux questions humanitaires, la question des échanges de prisonniers, la question des enfants déportés. Ce sont des actes immondes qui sont perpétrés contre les familles, les menaces nucléaires qui sont absolument irresponsables et inacceptables, et puis les implications de cette guerre en termes de sécurité alimentaire, en termes de conséquences économiques. On voit bien qu'il y a à la fois du contenu pour mobiliser la communauté internationale. Très certainement, et c'est mon espoir en tout cas, cette réunion est une étape majeure, essentielle, mais c'est le début d'un processus, et c'est un début d'un processus qui vise à rassembler davantage encore la communauté internationale autour de cette détermination à défendre les droits humains et la Charte des Nations Unies.
Le communiqué final est fini déjà, c'est déjà terminé. Il faut que les termes agression russe et intégrité territoriale ukrainienne soient absolument dans la déclaration.
On va dans les heures qui viennent continuer à parler de ces sujets-là, mais il n'y a pas de doute. Il y a un agresseur, la Russie, le Kremlin, et il y a un agressé, c'est le peuple ukrainien. Il n'y a pas de doute, il y a un membre permanent du Conseil de sécurité qui possède l'arme nucléaire, qui a envahi et qui a violé de façon flagrante les règles du droit international. Et c'est pour cela que l'on est mobilisé depuis le début de cette attaque généralisée contre l'Ukraine pour non seulement soutenir les Ukrainiens qui se battent sur le terrain militaire, mais aussi pour les soutenir sur le plan politique avec l'élargissement, qui est un acte extrêmement important qui a été engagé, mais aussi en menant une autre bataille, qui est la bataille politique et diplomatique. On voit bien qu'on est dans un moment de l'histoire du monde où il y a la tentation de remettre en cause des équilibres internationaux, la tentation de remettre en question un certain nombre de principes fondamentaux d'intégrité territoriale ou de souveraineté. Et c'est aussi ça qui est en jeu. Et c'est pour ça que l'Union européenne est très engagée avec l'Amérique latine, avec le continent africain, avec les pays asiatiques pour engager, pour expliquer et pour tenter de convaincre.
Qu'est-ce qu'il faut faire pour être à la deuxième conférence?
C'est la réponse la plus intelligente qu'il y a eu jusqu'à présent. Ouais.
Kosovo, Osmanie, Josa.
Mais c'était génial, c'était génial. La lucidité de la meuf qui s'est très bien quand ça va. Ouais, c'est ça. Merci. Elle devait être journaliste avant, la meuf, c'est pas possible. Avocate?
Peut-être, je sais pas. C'est celle qui est en blanche, j'imagine, parce qu'il n'y a que la ligne. C'est la Moldavie.
Oh, there is Scholz.
Et Scholz. Non, on va prendre Scholz. On va prendre Scholz. Enfin, il va pas parler.
Il y a Scholz.
Il est juste là.
Don't move too much, please.
Chancellor, a quick word for the press. How are things going?
Herr Bundeskanzler, glauben Sie, dass Sie
President Maya Sandu, please, a word.
Je sais pas. Non, en fait, ce que je vais faire, c'est que je vais enlever la carte à pas le passer. Je vais assurer les gens, je vais les I'm trying to not record everything. I mean, of course, when I was on the platform, it's just like, we already have like 45 minutes of, and it's using less than a really. C'est marrant. J'avais pas forcément le sentiment là quand tu regardais sur Fox.
Ça c'est bien. Je suis pas sûre que
ouais, la même chose quand il est parti. Il regarde là, il va.
6 heures comme ça. C'était le début, on nous dit l'intégrus.
Bah, tu vois, c'est pour ça qu'il fallait lui dire.
Responsable,
parce qu'on lui a dit que là, il lui a remis. Elle m'a dit non, mais on ne parlera pas.
De toute manière, on vous avait dit ça.
Je sais pas. Oui, mais je pense que c'est tout un peu. Tu penses, non?
Non. Ouais, pareil. C'est pas une mini d'un badge. C'est pas de badge. Non, please. Photo, please.
Prime Minister?
Prime Minister, how the Kazakhstan mediation could help in that crisis?
Regardez quoi. Merci.
Il est avec son drapeau, il a touché son drapeau. Ah, quelqu'un a vu, c'est qui?
Non, je ne sais pas du tout. Je sais pas. Il l'a pas sorti assez loin.
They're in alphabetical order.
Hola, buenas.
¿Por qué es importante estar aquí? No, mais répète avant de te lancer parce que.
Non, Kate, j'ai pas la vie, oui.
Estamos ante una clara violación del derecho internacional con la invasión de Rusia a Ucrania, como también la estamos con los ataques que estamos teniendo hoy día en Gaza por parte del ejército de Israel. Y creemos que tener un mismo estándar en materia de derechos humanos, de integridad territorial, es la clave para poder sostener
Sobre.
Señor Milei, para la prensa argentina, por favor.
C'est pas important. Et du coup, qu'on appelait Milei, le Mexicain, c'est bon. Je suis partie, j'avais pas le reste.
Je suis partie faire un son, je vais aller le faire d'ici, tu vois.
Ah, d'ici, c'était impossible.
Alexander Stubb, President of the Republic of Finland.
Sure, mindful, okay. You go to the gym? Yes, I have. Good. Thanks.
His Excellency Edgars Rinkēvičs, President of the Republic of Latvia. His Excellency Jakov Milatović, President of Montenegro. His Excellency Petr Pavel, President of the Czech Republic. His Excellency Denis Bečirović, Chairman of the Presidency of Bosnia and Herzegovina.
No mováis la valla mucho, por favor.
Unas palabras.
His Excellency William Ruto, President of the Republic of Kenya.
Albania.
His Excellency Bayram Begay, President of the Republic of Albania. His Excellency Javier Milei, President of the Argentine Republic. His Excellency Gabriel Boric Font, President of the Republic of Chile. Her Excellency Vjosa Osmani, President of the Republic of Kosovo. His Excellency Mohamed Menfi, President of the State of Libya. His Excellency Hassan Sheikh Mohamud, President of the Federal Republic of Somalia. His Excellency Sir Angel Samuel Whipps, President of the Republic of Palau. Her Excellent... Her Excellency Maia Sandu, President of the Republic of Moldova. His Excellency Pedro Sánchez Pérez Castellón, President of the Government of the Kingdom of Spain. His Excellency Luis Rodolfo Abinader Corona, President of the Dominican Republic. His Excellency Juraj Blanar, Minister of Foreign and European Affairs of the Slovak Republic. His Excellency Fumio Kishida, Prime Minister of Japan. My apologies. His Excellency Fumio Kishida, Prime Minister of Japan. His Excellency Stefan Brunner, Vice President of the Republic of Costa Rica. His Excellency Prince Faisal bin Farhan Al Saud, Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. His Excellency Sheikh Mohammed bin Abdul Rahman Al Thani, Prime Minister of the State of Qatar. His Excellency Alassane Ouattara, President of the Republic of Côte d'Ivoire. His Excellency Gitanas Nausėda, President of the Republic of Lithuania. Her Excellency Ursula von der Leyen, President of the European Commission. His Excellency Charles Michel, President of the European Council. His Excellency Marcelo Rebelo de Sousa, President of the Portuguese Republic. His Excellency Andrzej Duda, President of the Republic of Poland.
minutes, we're going to introduce.
How many
We have 3, 4, 5 still missing, but not too much. So you prefer to wait a few minutes?
Yes.
Would you like some water?
Yes.
I was manager.
You can stay here.
Okay. Okay.
Okay.
No water. No water, no life.
His Excellency Rishi Sunak, Prime Minister of the United Kingdom.
Very nice to see you. Thank you. No, you too. Thank you for hosting us. It's a very important occasion, and it's fantastic that you brought together such a large number of people. We're looking forward to today's discussion.
This way, please, Prime Minister. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, it's all good. Yeah, of course. I'll see you inside. Yeah, oh gosh, sorry.
Yeah, this way, please. This way, please. You've lost weight, Mr. Lizenz. You've lost weight. You look good on it.
Thank you. Oh. Yes, all of us.
Thank you.
Perfect.
His Excellency Justin Trudeau, Prime Minister of Canada. Meloni. Okay. Sinon. Salut.
Hello, my friend.
Hello.
How are
Vice
you?
President. Good to see you. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Yes, I'm well.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the opening plenary of the Summit on Peace in Ukraine is about to start. The first speaker will be Ms. Viola Amherd, President of the Swiss Confederation. The plenary will be chaired by Mr. Cassis, Head of the Federal Department of Foreign Affairs. Madam President, you have the floor.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it is an honor for me to welcome you here to the Bürgenstock, high above Lake Lucerne. There is a long tradition of seeking ways out of war in peaceful places. The Bürgenstock is that kind of place. Though its beauty is in sharp contrast to the reason for this summit, the mountains serve as a reminder that it takes many steps to achieve ambitious goals. Our goal is to inspire a process towards a just and lasting peace in Ukraine. Of course, we are aware that there is a long path ahead of us. We are under no illusion that we will reach a conclusive understanding at this summit. But we can come closer to reaching such an understanding word by word, proposal by proposal, step by step. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the past 28 months have made it clear that the war in Ukraine has far-reaching repercussions for international order, for those in the areas directly affected by the hostilities, and for the lives of millions of people around the world. We all have an existential interest in ensuring that international relations are based on rules and on respect for international law and human rights. Switzerland is a partner for peace and dialogue. As a neutral country, we look back on a long tradition of solidarity and good offices. The harmonious coexistence of nations isn't just a noble objective. Striving for a just and peaceful international order is a commitment set out in our Constitution. To fulfill this responsibility and honor our tradition, my government accepted President Zelensky's request to host this summit. Our aim is to launch a broadly supported process where voices from all corners of the globe can discuss their ideas and points of view. The fact that you have accepted our invitation and that your nations, as well as international organizations, have sent such high-level delegations proves that this approach was right. Although our objective is ambitious, it is in the interests of everyone here to commit to this ambition. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, we are all aware that a peace process without Russia is inconceivable. A lasting solution must involve both parties. As an international community, we can help to pave the way. That is why we are here. At the same time, we are aiming to achieve real progress on specific issues. With your support, we have defined 3 issues of global impact that we will discuss in our working groups. These are nuclear safety, food security, and the human dimension of the war. Our most important goals for this weekend are to inspire a process leading to a framework for a comprehensive, just, and lasting peace for Ukraine based on international law and the UN Charter. To develop a common understanding on how to take concrete steps towards such a framework. And we want to discuss how and under what conditions Russia can be included in this process. It is essential that so many of us use this summit to express our support for a peaceful process, for a process beyond any armed hostilities. Over the past few months, you have actively and with the utmost commitment helped plan and prepare for this summit. I wish to thank you most sincerely for your help. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, finding a path to peace requires perseverance and will. It requires effort on all sides. We can only achieve the ambitious goal of this summit if we pool our strength and come together, even in areas where our positions differ. Here on the Bürgenstock, we will all be making that first crucial step. It is up to us to make sure it is followed by a second. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam President. And now I invite the President of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, to take the floor for his address.
Thank you so much. Madam President, thank you. Thank you for your efforts to organize the summit and bring about a just peace. Ladies and gentlemen, today is the day when the world begins to bring a just peace closer. I thank everyone who has worked for this day, every leader, all the teams and advisors, all the states. 101 states and international organizations are now at the summit, and this is a tremendous success, our success, the common success of all those who believe that a united world, United Nations are stronger than any aggressor. Distinguished leaders and representatives of states and international organizations, everyone who is here today for the sake of a just peace. I'm pleased to welcome everyone to the first Peace Summit, which can be the first step towards a just end to the war of Russia against Ukraine. And when we end it justly and fairly for Ukraine on the basis of international law, then every nation in the world will be able to count on the same justice and fairness, on the same effectiveness of the UN Charter with regard to its rights. And then these words will once again have their full power. We, the peoples of the United Nations, determined to save succeeding generations from the scourge of war, which twice in our lifetime has brought untold sorrow to mankind, and to reaffirm faith in fundamental human rights, in the dignity and worth of the human person, in the equal rights of men and women, and so important of nations, large and small, and to establish conditions under which justice and respect for the obligations arising from treaties and other sources of international law can be maintained. These are the first words of the UN Charter, but they are also the words that describe the essence of the peace formula, which became the basis of the Peace Summit and encouraged all parts of the world and different nations with equal respect to participate in our joint work. The Peace Summit, our unity here proves that the very idea of international law remains alive and effective. Your presence here proves that the UN Charter and the basic conventions are not a formality, but the real foundations of coexistence among peoples. Our principles are clear. No one had the right to wage a war of aggression against a neighbor and undermine one of the basic principles of the UN Charter, the territorial integrity of states. No one had the right to threaten the world with nuclear weapons. No one had the right to undermine food, energy, or any other security of the world and its regions. No one had the right to kidnap the children of another nation. No one had the right to undermine peace. We are able to ensure the effectiveness of such principles. These are globally important principles. And I am grateful to you, distinguished leaders and representatives of states and international organizations, for proving that the world may not fall into total war anymore. The war Russia unfortunately brought to us, to Ukraine, to our homes, to Ukrainian cities, our villages, and hundreds of them were unfortunately completely burned by the Russian bombs, artillery, and missiles. Putin has taken the lives of thousands of our people. Why? Because he wants to take over a neighboring country. I do not wish this to anyone. I sincerely wish that all of you, all the peoples of the world, every child, every family could simply live without war. And I want this for all Ukrainians. Ukraine had the right to peace, just like all of you. Ladies and gentlemen, we must stop this war based on the UN Charter, respect for international law, the just interests of the Ukrainian people, and the idea of the undeniable value of human life, not war. Now we will focus on 3 points, like Madam President said, on what is useful to everyone in the world, without exception. The first point is radiation and nuclear safety. The second is food security. The third is the release of prisoners and deportees, adults and children, military and civilians whose lives have been broken by war. We will focus on 3 initial points of the peace formula, and in the process of working on them, we can reach an agreement and create an action plan for each point of the formula. Therefore, this inaugural peace summit includes 3 panels where each participating country can show its leadership. The peace formula is inclusive, and we are happy to hear and work on all proposals, all ideas, what is really needed for peace and what is important to you, dear friends. I urge all of you to be as active as possible, and I'm proud that all parts of the world, all continents are now represented at the Peace Summit. We have managed to avoid one of the most terrible things, namely the division of the world into opposing blocs. Here, there are representatives from Latin America, Africa, Europe, Middle East, and Asia, the Pacific, North America, and religious leaders. 101 participants, and no one had the privilege of deciding for another. This is true multipolarity, when each political pole of the earth is represented and has its own influence in solving a globally important issue. No one doubts that the global majority wants to guarantee all aspects of security, including nuclear and food security. The majority of the world definitely supports the principle of territorial integrity of states, sovereignty of nations, and equality in relations between peoples. The world majority definitely wants to live without bloody crises, deportations, and ecocides. And so every nation that is not represented now and that shares the same values of the UN Charter, in deed and word, will be able to join our work in the next stages. The peace formula encourages all the powers of the world to think about ending the war and to propose how to end it. And therefore, the very idea of war has already lost. Putin should switch from the language of ultimatums to the language of the world majority, which wants a just peace. Distinguished leaders and representatives of states, what exactly can this summit deliver. First is to prove that the return of security is indeed possible. We will work out the steps with you. Second is to provide a real plan to make every step for peace work, from nuclear and food security to the release of prisoners and deportees, to the complete end of the war without the threat of its new outbreak. I believe it's possible. Third, there is no need to reinvent the wheel when the UN Charter already defines the foundations of peace and normal coexistence of peoples. We just have to return to them. And for this purpose, we need to decide how countries will cooperate, who will be co-leaders, in order to fix and implement an action plan. These are absolutely clear and achievable goals. Now, there is no Russia here. Why? Because if Russia was interested in peace, there would be no war. We must decide together what a just peace means for the world and how it can be achieved in a truly lasting way. The UN Charter is the basis for us. And then, when the action plan is on the table, agreed by all, and transparent for the peoples, then it will be communicated to the representatives of Russia. And so that at the second peace summit we can fix the real end of the war. Now we are starting this path together. We must prove that the united world is a world of peace, a world that knows how to act correctly. Thank you for attention. Thank you for participating in the summit. I hope for fruitful work together, of course, together. We all need peace. Slava Ukraini!
Thank you, Mr. President. Now I'm pleased to hand over the floor to the Vice President of the United States of America, Kamala Harris.
Thank you. Thank you, President Ahmed and President Zelensky, for hosting this summit. It is my honor to be here with all of the leaders today. I first met President Zelensky in February of 2022, just 5 days before Russia invaded Ukraine. An outrageous attempt to subjugate a free people and an attempt to wipe a sovereign state off the map. On that same day, I addressed the Munich Security Conference and made clear that the United States of America is a steadfast supporter of the principles that people have a right to choose their own form of government. Nations have a right to choose their own alliances. There are inalienable rights governments must protect. The rule of law must be cherished. Sovereignty and territorial integrity of all states must be respected. And national borders should not be changed by force. And nearly 2.5 years later, I am here to reaffirm the commitment of the United States to these principles and our unwavering commitment to support the people of Ukraine as they defend themselves against Russia's brutal aggression. As I discussed with President Zelensky earlier today, President Biden and I have made clear over the past 3 years, we are committed to uphold international rules and norms, to defend democratic values and stand up to dictators, and to stand with our allies and partners. This approach has provided for our security and prosperity for generations, and it continues to do so today. This approach makes America strong, and it keeps Americans safe. And this approach bolsters global stability. Russia's aggression is not only an attack on the lives and the freedom of the people of Ukraine. It is not only an attack on global food security and energy supplies. Russia's aggression is also an attack on international rules and norms and the principles embodied in the UN Charter. Russia is a permanent member of the United Nations Security Council. Nevertheless, for nearly 2.5 years, it has shamelessly violated the core tenets of that charter. If the world fails to respond when an aggressor invades its neighbor, other aggressors will undoubtedly become emboldened. It leads to the potential of a war of conquest and chaos, not order and stability, which threatens all nations. President Joe Biden and I will continue to support Ukraine and continue to impose costs on Russia. And we will continue to work toward a just and lasting peace based on the principles of the United Nations Charter and the will of the people of Ukraine. President Zelensky, the United States shares your vision for the end of this war and an end to the suffering of the Ukrainian people. And let us all then commit to the imperative of returning innocent children kidnapped by Russia, returning them to their homes. Let us also agree a practical benefit of the work of this peace summit is to increase global food and energy security. And let nothing about the end of this war be decided without Ukraine. By contrast, however, yesterday, Putin put forward a proposal. But we must speak truth. He is not calling for negotiations, he is calling for surrender. America stands with Ukraine, not out of charity, but because it is in our strategic interest. We stand with delegations from more than 90 nations who also have a strategic interest in a just peace in Ukraine. Among us, no doubt, exists a diverse range of views on many of the global challenges and opportunities we face. We don't always agree. However, regarding Putin's unprovoked, unjustified war against Ukraine, there is unity and solidarity in support of international norms and rules. For President Joe Biden and me, it is one of our defining missions to uphold the international rules-based order, to defend it, strengthen it, and promote it. And no doubt it must be a priority for us all. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. May I now ask the President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, to give her address.
President Amherd, liebe Viola, President Zelensky, dear Volodymyr, Vice President Harris, dear Kamala, Presidents and Prime Ministers, Ministers, Excellencies. We have all come to Switzerland from different places, with different histories. We may not always see the world in the same way, but there's something all our countries have in common. We all value our independence and our freedom. We all expect our borders to be respected. We all yearn to be the masters of our own destiny. Some, indeed many countries, have had to fight for this, for independence, for self-determination, for freedom. And this is also what Ukraine is fighting for. This is also what the people of Ukraine desire. And their greatest aspiration is to be independent and free in peace. They want the missiles to stop hitting their cities. They want to live free from fear. They want their children to be safe, not constantly worrying about the next air raid siren. Surely this is the right of all countries and all people. And this is why we're here today. We're here today to help bring an end to a brutal and unjust war. A conflict that has shattered lives and displaced millions. The echoes of Russia's war of aggression reverberate across the globe. Energy prices have soared, food prices have exploded, and it is a cautionary tale for the entire world. Is it right that a larger country can invade and take territory from a smaller neighbor? The answer is, of course, no. It is written in the Charter of the United Nations. And that is why it is vital that we reaffirm that charter. It is vital that we pledge again to uphold firmly the principles of the UN Charter. Freezing the conflict today with foreign troops occupying Ukrainian land is not an answer. In fact, it is a recipe for future wars of aggression. Instead, we need to support a comprehensive, just, and sustainable peace for Ukraine. One that restores Ukraine's sovereignty and its territorial integrity, the inviolability of all borders, the sovereignty of all nations. This is at stake. And history teaches us the quest for peace is fraught with challenges. But it was precisely from the ashes of World War II that the United Nations were born. And today we need once again to light that beacon of hope for global peace and security. We, the international community, must stand together to support Ukraine in its pursuit of peace. That is how we open the path to peace. That is how we open the path that will allow lives and homes to be rebuilt. And that is how we open the path to restore international peace and security. Our common task is to reaffirm the primacy of the United Nations Charter. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam President. As we would like to give the opportunity to speak to everybody during the upcoming sessions, I kindly ask all speakers to limit your interventions to 1 to 3 minutes. I am now pleased to invite the President of Kenya, William Ruto, to give his intervention.
The President of Switzerland, the President Zelensky of Ukraine, Madam Vice President of the United States, heads of states, ladies and gentlemen. 79 years after the international community established a multilateral institutional framework to save succeeding generations from the scourge of war, Russia's invasion of Ukraine has been a horrifying spectacle of carnage and devastation, which has left 500,000 people dead and 7.1 million people displaced in its wake. Across the world, people and nations are enduring the negative consequences of disrupted supply chains. Kenya's position has been clear and unequivocal from the beginning. Russia's aggression against Ukraine is unlawful, unjust, and a violation of the fundamental principles of international law, which honor the sovereign equality of nations, upholds their territorial integrity, and advocates the peaceful resolution of all disagreements. Just like the war in Ukraine, the war in the Middle East has been equally devastating. So is the case with the war in the Sahel region in Africa, in Eastern DRC, in Somalia, in the Horn of Africa, and of course in the Sudan. 40 million Africans have been displaced by the war in our continent, and 2.5 million kids are out of school. This state of affairs speaks volumes of global leadership, and especially the peace architecture at the United Nations, and more specifically, the gridlock at the United Nations Security Council. Today, a farmer in Kenya, in rural Kenya actually, knows there is war in Ukraine for two reasons. Number one, he paid more for his fertilizer, and number two, his fertilizer came late. Let me also say, this peace summit is a historic step in the right direction. For the first time, we have convened to talk about peace in Ukraine and not war in Ukraine. Secondly, a commitment to peace makes certain fundamental concessions inevitable. This summit should not be a meeting of just friends. This should be a meeting of both friends and foe. To succeed in this positive trajectory, Russia must be on the table, number one. Number two, an American general, Norman Swartzwelder, said, the more we sweat in peace, the less we bleed in war. It is time for leaders of the world to talk about peace, negotiate peace, work hard to build peace, and configure a global strategic framework that integrates peace as the sole means and end of human endeavor. Finally, we have gathered here and we are reminded by the Indian statesman Mahatma Gandhi, who said that an eye for an eye will make humanity blind. Just as Russia's invasion of Ukraine was unlawful and unacceptable, the unilateral appropriation of Russia's assets is equally unlawful, unacceptable, and a derogation from the UN Charter, especially for those of us who believe in freedom, justice, and democracy, and the rule of law. As we embark on this journey to resolve conflict in Ukraine and throughout the world, it's time for parties to the war in Ukraine to demonstrate good faith, abandon intransigent attitudes, and soften their positions. I thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President. I am delighted to hand over the floor to the Chancellor of Germany, Olaf Scholz.
Madam President, dear Viola Amherd, dear Volodymyr Zelensky, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. We have come here today to talk about peace. Peace in Ukraine first and foremost, of course, but nothing less than our global security and the rules-based international order are at stake. For Ukraine, defending itself for over 2 years against the Russian aggression is an existential fight to secure its free and democratic future, as Russia denies Ukraine its independence, its territorial integrity, and its very existence as a sovereign nation. This illegal war of aggression has shattered peace and brought imperialism back to the European continent. While this is a war in Europe, it has, as we have witnessed over the last 2 years, far-reaching global consequences. This war has endangered international food and energy security. It has put the threat of a nuclear catastrophe back on our minds. It has weakened global economic growth and highlighted the fate of the most vulnerable of innocent civilians, unlawfully displaced persons, in particular children and prisoners of war. This all comes to show. This war affects us all. That is why I describe the Russian war of aggression as a Zeitenwende, a watershed moment. But how to end Russia's war against Ukraine and achieve a just and lasting peace? Let me share some reflections with you today. First, no country wants peace more than Ukraine. But let us be honest, peace is more than the absence of war. An immediate ceasefire without serious negotiations, without a roadmap toward a just and lasting peace, merely on the basis of so-called new realities, would only legitimize Russia's illegal land grab. In the end, this would result in yet another frozen conflict, a scenario that is unjust, dangerous, and not sustainable, neither for Ukraine nor Europe or the international community as a whole. Second, Some say that any negotiated peace must take into account Russia's legitimate security concerns. Let us recall that before the invasion, both NATO and the US were ready to enter into a broader discussion on European security that included all relevant countries. The aim was to promote transparency and stability and to build trust in order to reduce the likelihood of future conflict. As we all know, it was Russia that chose war over diplomacy and dialogue. So let me be very clear, whatever the perception of one's own security concerns may be, these concerns must not and cannot justify an invasion of a peaceful neighboring country. Third, I would like to highlight that it is Ukraine, the victim of unprovoked aggression, that has had the courage to present to the world a peace plan. Inspired by President Zelensky's peace formula, many, if not all, of the countries represented here today have participated in the Copenhagen, Jeddah, Valletta and Davos meetings of national security advisors. And so we are here today. I'm very grateful to our Swiss hosts that we can enter into a truly global exchange on principles for a just, lasting and comprehensive peace and on how to achieve the widest possible international support for a future peace process in Ukraine. Which document is better suited to guide us than the Charter of the United Nations with its fundamental principles of territorial integrity and sovereignty? This also includes the respect for international humanitarian law and human rights. It includes the sovereign equality of all states, the peaceful resolution of conflicts, and multilateral cooperation for the benefit of humanity. These principles are binding for us all, and they are the foundation of the international rules-based order. My last point today is on Russia. It is true, peace in Ukraine cannot be achieved without involving Russia. But let us not forget that, as we speak, Russia continues to relentlessly wage its brutal war. We all know Russia could end this war today or at any given moment once it ceases its onslaught and withdraws troops from Ukraine. To date, Russia has refused to heed our collective call for peace on the basis of international law and the UN Charter. Our gathering today is important, and I want to thank all of you for your participation. We all recognize that achieving peace still requires tremendous efforts. We should jointly seek to achieve a framework and a roadmap for concrete steps in this direction. I have compared this process to a small plant that needs watering, nurturing, and delicate care. Let us engage collectively in ensuring that this plant develops and grows. Let us use the time until our next meeting to intensify our efforts. I look forward to your and to our discussions.
Thank you very much, Chancellor. I am now pleased to invite Prime Minister Sheikh Mohammed Al Thani from Qatar to share his thoughts.
Madam President Viola Amr, Sir President Zelensky, Excellencies, I would like to begin by extending my appreciation to the Federal Republic of Switzerland for hosting this summit towards seeking peaceful solution to the Russian-Ukrainian conflict. Amidst an international climate of conflict, the importance of continuing to call for a ceasefire and striving to find a peaceful solution is clear now more than ever. In this context, I renew the State of Qatar's call on all parties to comply with Charter of United Nations and international law, respect the sovereignty and territorial integrity of states, to uphold our collective commitment to settle international disputes by peaceful means, and to refrain from threatening to or resorting to the use of force. Ladies and gentlemen, the State of Qatar has strived to keep channels of communication open in order to work on addressing the humanitarian repercussions of this conflict. With this in mind, and at the request of our Ukrainian friends, Qatar hosted talks in Doha with the participation of both Ukrainian and Russian delegations in order to discuss the reunification of Ukrainian children with their families in Ukraine. These efforts have been welcomed by Russia and have so far resulted in reunification of 34 children with their families, and our efforts continue to reunite many more. Under our Health and Recovery Program, we have hosted these families in Doha to provide a comprehensive care for them and their children. Esteemed guests, since the beginning of this conflict, the State of Qatar has strived to support international efforts to address the worsening humanitarian repercussions and protect civilians through multiple pledges to support health, education, and food security initiatives launched by Ukraine. Internationally, we played a key role in alleviating the global energy crisis arising from this conflict, working to maintain supply, quantities, and price stability in global markets by rapidly increasing our LNG exports to European countries. Excellencies, amidst this global context of conflict and disasters, international cooperation is vital now more than ever. I look forward to the discussions that will result from this summit in the coming days and to exploring suitable mechanisms that will ensure the participation of all parties in a constructive dialogue towards achieving a peaceful solution in accordance with international law and Charter of the United Nations. Thank you.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Thank you also for being on time. May I hand over to the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Saudi Arabia, Prince Faisal bin Farhan Al Saud.
Your Excellencies, I would like to thank the Swiss Confederation for inviting us to attend this summit, in line with its long tradition as mediators and peacemakers. The Kingdom's participation in this summit stems from our commitment to support all efforts at reaching an end to this conflict and achieving sustainable and just peace and security. We hope this summit provides the much-needed basis for placing us on a political track to resolving the conflict. Since this conflict erupted, the Kingdom has asserted the centrality of international law, the importance of peacefully resolving differences through dialogue, and the need to reduce tensions and mitigate the global impacts of the war. His Royal Highness the Crown Prince and Prime Minister also extended the Kingdom's good offices to both sides, expressing our readiness to mediate and bring the conflict closer to a solution. These efforts have positively contributed to the exchange of hundreds of prisoners, including multiple foreign nationals. The disruption to peace and security in Europe has affected global stability and hindered collective action and global cooperation. We reaffirm the importance of facilitating access to global food supplies and working to strengthen both global food and energy security in the face of the challenges the world faces. More than 2 years into this conflict, the impact is felt by the international community, and it is therefore a shared burden to encourage peace and negotiation rather than further escalation. The Kingdom views as a priority the need to facilitate a cessation of hostilities and to encourage an environment conducive to peace, one that spares further destruction and the loss of life. This overreaching consideration has been reflected in our balanced position from the beginning of the conflict, while leveraging our positive relations and good offices with both sides in search of a pathway to peace. We have also sought to provide Ukraine critical humanitarian assistance to alleviate the suffering of the Ukrainian people. These principles reflect the Kingdom's long-standing position, and we will continue to lend our support to all efforts to facilitate dialogue between both parties. We believe it is important that the international community encourage any step towards serious negotiations, which will require difficult compromise as part of a roadmap that leads to peace. And here it is essential to emphasize that any credible process will need Russia's participation. We hope the outcomes of this summit reflect those aims. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister. It is my pleasure to ask the Prime Minister of Japan, Fumio Kishida, to give his address.
はい、まず、スイスの素晴らしいホスピタリティと、そしてサミット開催に向けたご尽力に、心から謝意を表します。日本は、2年以上前にロシアが侵略を開始した直後から、今日のウクライナは明日の東アジアかもしれない、こうした考え方のもと、厳しい対ロ制裁と強力なウクライナ支援を実施してきました。また、一昨日には、ウクライナをさらに支えていくべく、私とゼレンスキー大統領との間で二国間文書に署名をいたしました。また、昨年5月、私が議長を務めた G7 広島サミットにおいて、ゼレンスキー大統領や招待国の首脳も交えて議論を行い、主権、領土の一体性の尊重といった国連憲章の原則を守ることをはじめとする4つの原則を確認いたしました。この広島での議論が基盤となり、本日、ウクライナに平和をもたらすべく、約100の国と国際機関の代表がここに集まったことを喜ばしく思います。本日、我々は一つの共通の思いのもとにここに集まりました。それは、ウクライナに一日も早く平和をもたらしたいと望んでいるということです。そして、その平和は国連憲章を含む国際法の諸原則に基づく公正かつ永続的な平和でなくてはならず、力や威圧による一方的な現状変更の試みを正当化するようなものであってはなりません。このような公正かつ永続的な平和をウクライナで実現することは、国際社会全体を分断、対立ではなく、協調の世界に導いていくために象徴的に重要なことです。ここに集う我々が率先してリーダーシップを発揮しようではありませんか。国際社会が一致して取り組むに際しては、我々の命や生活に直接的影響を与える喫緊の問題への対応も急務です。日本は今回のサミットのテーマの一つである原子力安全につき、共同議長として議論に積極的に貢献してきています。また、人道問題も重要です。日本はウクライナの人々が安心して日々の生活を取り戻せるよう、電力分野や地雷除去分野での取り組みを強化していきます。そして来年、地雷除去に関する国際会議を日本で開催する予定であり、日本ならではの形で貢献していきます。日本はウクライナの美しい大地に平和を取り戻すべく、国際社会と緊密に協力し、引き続き取り組みを継続してまいります。Thank you so much.
Thank you, Prime Minister. And now I'm delighted to pass on the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, Rishi Sunak.
Thank you, President Amherd, President Zelensky. Colleagues, Russia chose to wage war on Ukraine. We come here united because we choose peace. Peace based on the foundational principles of the United Nations Charter. The Ukrainian people did not ask for this fight, but in defending their country, their valor and their sacrifice have been truly humbling to witness. It is a cruel paradox that the things that make life worth living are also the things for which brave men and women are prepared to die. For family, for freedom, for the ability to shape one's own future. We salute them all, just as we abhor all of those who have pushed this fate upon them. I recall my first visit to Kyiv when I saw the explosive devices that departing Russian soldiers had placed in children's toys and footballs. There can be no justification for that. There can be no justification for escalating nuclear rhetoric. There can be no justification for disrupting food supplies to tens of millions of vulnerable people. Now, there will be, of course, a diversity of views around this table, but I commend and thank everyone for their participation here today, demonstrating that you all seek a genuine peace to this conflict. Because Putin has no interest in a genuine peace. He's launched a sustained diplomatic campaign against this very summit, ordering countries to stay away. And we should ask, why does Russia feel that they are so threatened by a summit discussing the basic principles of territorial integrity, food security, and nuclear safety? Instead, Russia's representative at the United Nations recently said, the only topic for any international meetings on Ukraine will be the unconditional surrender of the Kyiv regime. Well, that will never happen, because aggression cannot and will not prevail. Instead, we must set out the principles for a just and lasting peace based on international law and the UN Charter. That is the path to a permanent cessation of hostilities, showing that we will always protect the right of all nations to determine their own future. And this summit is the chance to start down that path, to respond together to the global impacts of the war in Ukraine, to send a strong message from the international community to Russia and beyond that we want to end the suffering. We want to see an end to this war, and we want to make this the day that the path towards a just and lasting peace in Ukraine became that much closer. Thank you.
Thank you, Prime Minister. I'm honored to now pass the floor to the Prime Minister of Timor-Leste, Mr. Shah Mama Gush Mahu.
Excellencies, thank you for giving Timor-Leste the opportunity to share our perspective. I would like to thank Her Excellency Viola Amherd, President of the Swiss Confederation, for inviting me to this Peace Summit. I will keep my intervention brief, focusing on a message that I humbly ask you to bear in mind as we discuss the pathways forward to bring peace to Ukraine and its people. Timor-Leste profoundly understands the suffering faced by the Ukrainian people as a result of the ongoing conflict. We also experienced the invasion and occupation, and our people still carry the haunting memories of the war, which still remain all too vivid for us. From our experience, we learned that we could not put an end to a war which was being supported by Western nations, the same countries that used to speak of the importance of international law and the rules-based order. What kept us determined to continue to fight and die was the hope that after the war, we would live in a new world order that was being promoted at the time. But unfortunately, after 24 years of war and now being independent, what we see is a world of disorder with even more conflict than before. Excellencies, international law is the foundation of global peace and order. However, it must be applied uniformly to every nation, and all states must abide by it. Today, we continue to see the selective application of international law. We see some nations oppose occupation in one country, but not in another. Too often, the very nations that proclaim the sanctity of international law are the ones that violate it. If we are committed to maintaining international peace and security, We must apply international law consistently, without selective enforcement, and treat all conflicts with equal importance. We have a moral obligation to address and be concerned about all conflicts equally. Currently, around 65 wars continue worldwide. Even if they seem distant from our own countries, we must not forget them. We must hold on to international law's promise of justice and reach for peace. Excellencies, I will conclude my message by once again appealing to you to remember these points as we move forward in our discussions and, more importantly, after we return to our respective countries. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Prime Minister. Now I invite the President of Ghana, Nana Akufo-Addo, to take the floor.
Excellencies, I speak to you today at a seminal moment in our collective pursuit of peace and justice. We're gathered here with a shared mission to seek a comprehensive, just, and lasting peace for Ukraine, grounded firmly in the principles of international law and the United Nations Charter. It is well established that Russia's aggression against Ukraine constitutes a flagrant violation of international law, an unjust act that has wreaked havoc not only on Ukraine, but on economies worldwide, particularly those in Africa. Ghana, one of 28 African countries who joined the global majority at the General Assembly of the United Nations in condemning the act of aggression, did so for principal reasons, emanating from her historic opposition to great power hegemony, domination, and bullying of small nations, which led her to lead Africa's successful struggle for liberation from colonialism, imperialism, and the racist system of apartheid. The ripple effects of the Russia-Ukraine conflict have reached far and wide, disrupting global trade, destabilizing markets, and exacerbating economic hardships for millions and millions of people. The African continent has been particularly hard hit. Our economies, already vulnerable and struggling to recover from the impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic, have faced additional strains due to this conflict. The blockade of the Black Sea has led to severe shortages and skyrocketing food prices, which have precipitated a food security crisis across Africa, as many nations rely heavily on these imports to feed their populations. The cost of living has surged, and the specter of hunger and malnutrition looms large over our most vulnerable populations. In the face of such widespread suffering, it is imperative that we come together to chart a path towards peace. This summit offers a crucial platform for dialogue, enabling us to address the complexities of this conflict and work collaboratively towards a resolution. In this context, the Ukrainian peace formula stands out as a critical framework for reaching lasting peace. The formula emphasizes several key elements essential for a sustainable resolution: the immediate cessation of hostilities, the withdrawal of Russian troops, and the restoration of Ukraine's territorial integrity. It also underscores the need for the protection of human rights and the facilitation of humanitarian aid to those affected by the conflict. By adhering to the principles outlined in the Ukraine peace formula, we can ensure that any peace agreement is just, equitable, and enduring. It is equally imperative that any resolution, whilst respecting Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity, addresses the legitimate security concerns of all parties involved. This comprehensive approach will help prevent future conflicts and foster a stable and secure environment in the region. The Ukraine peace formula provides a viable roadmap, and together we can work towards a future where all nations can coexist in harmony and security. And it is for this reason that Ghana regrets the absence of the Russian Federation and the People's Republic of China at this meeting. This meeting is a testament to our collective will to seek peace and justice. And I'm hopeful that through our concerted efforts, we will succeed, no matter how long and arduous the journey. I thank you for your attention.
Mr. President, thank you very much. May I now hand over to the President of Spain, Pedro Sánchez.
Let me begin by thanking Switzerland for hosting this summit of peace in Ukraine. More than 2 years have gone by since the beginning of Russia's military aggression, a clear violation of international law and the principles of the UN Charter, including those of sovereignty, independence, and territorial integrity. I want to pay tribute to the heroism and resilience of the Ukrainian people and its government in the defense of their country. Spain will continue to support Ukraine for as long as necessary, because one thing is clear in this conflict: there is an aggressor, which is Putin, and there is a victim, which is the Ukrainian people. In every conflict,
integridad territorial. Quiero honrar el heroísmo y la resiliencia del pueblo de Ucrania y su gobierno en la defensa de su país. España seguirá dando apoyo a Ucrania todo el tiempo necesario, porque hay algo claro en este conflicto. Hay un agresor, que es Putin, y hay una víctima, que es el pueblo de Ucrania. En todos los conflictos debemos defender a la víctima y parar al agresor. Hoy lidiamos con algunas de las consecuencias mundiales de este conflicto. Una terrible crisis humanitaria ha empeorado una crisis alimentaria mundial que ya teníamos, que perjudica sobre todo a los más débiles, y el miedo de la catástrofe nuclear que pensamos que nunca volveríamos a ver. España ha trabajado activamente con políticas y recursos para intentar mitigarlos. Pero hay otra consecuencia importante de esta guerra, que es el impacto en el orden internacional. Puede ser una tentación echar la culpa a otros, como a Occidente, a la OTAN, de echarles la culpa de esta guerra. Rusia podría alegar que tiene una preocupación respecto a la seguridad de la situación de Europa y que sus preocupaciones son legítimas. No obstante, se deben aplicar normas básicas en cualquier caso para mantener una coexistencia pacífica entre naciones. Hay normas muy sencillas, como por ejemplo, un país no puede invadir a su vecino, no puede anexionar el territorio de otro país a la fuerza. El alimento no es un arma y las amenazas nucleares son inaceptables. Si no actuamos de acuerdo a estas normas y no las defendemos contundentemente, no hay orden internacional. El caos arrastraría nuestro mundo a la ley de aquel que sea más fuerte. Y simplemente esto no es aceptable. Hoy, en esta reunión tan importante, debemos lanzar un mensaje inequívoco que nos unen unos valores troncales, como lo son el respeto a la soberanía de todos y cada uno de los países, su independencia y su integridad territorial, que el derecho internacional y el derecho humanitario internacional son de aplicación siempre y se deben respetar siempre. Son principios universales que debemos defender de forma contundente, con coherencia y constancia, en todos los lugares, en cualquier momento, independientemente de quién esté involucrado. Los principios son principios y, por tanto, no son negociables. Debemos sentar los mimbres de una paz equitativa y duradera en Ucrania, una solución que valide una agresión o una anexión por la fuerza no durará, solo llevará a un mundo más inestable y peligroso. Esperamos que esta reunión ayude a generar ese consenso para eventualmente llegar a una solución en un futuro con todas las partes involucradas, incluida Rusia. Ha llegado la hora de proporcionar una paz justa y duradera que merecen Ucrania y el mundo. Gracias.
Thank you, Mr. President. As next speaker, may I call the Prime Minister of Croatia, Andrej Plenković.
Thank you very much, Madam President of the Swiss Confederation, Mr. President of Ukraine. First of all, thank you for having organized this global summit on peace in Ukraine, widely attended and well planned. Russia's invasion of Ukraine actually is not only 2 years and 4 months long, it's a 10-year invasion and aggression of a neighboring country that has proved that the international law is not respected, that the global governance has been left without an answer to this conflict. It has caused disruption.
Large, and beyond that, for the ideals of democracy and for sustaining, maintaining, or restoring the rule of law. My country, Georgia, can only share the plight of the Ukrainian people that we have experienced in our turn. Before Bucha, there was Abkhazia, is the title of a film. And yes, before the war against Ukraine, there was a war against Georgia, not once, but many times. And before the occupation of territories in Ukraine, there was the occupation of territories in Georgia. So my country can only share the concern for the human devastation that Ukraine is living through, the forced transfers of children. My country can only share the concern for the instability and confrontation that Russia has brought to the Black Sea instead of cooperation and connectivity, which we are all thinking about. militarization of the Black Sea, when Russia is planning to open a new additional military naval base in the territory of Georgia, in the region of Abkhazia. My country can also only share the concern about nuclear safety, having experienced the effects of the Chernobyl disaster. For all this reason, we can only share the conviction that this war against Ukraine has to cease and has to give way to peace in Ukraine and to peace in Europe. And that can only happen if and when, beyond the initial steps that should be designed today, when Russia realizes that it has borders as any other state, and that it has neighbors as any other state, and that international community, new architecture of security can only exist when the big countries, the large countries, and one of the largest ones, recognizes its neighbors, respects its neighbors and their territorial integrity. Slava Ukraini.
Madam President, thank you very much. Now I invite the President of the European Council, Charles Michel, to give his contribution.
Thank you. Madam President of the Swiss Confederation, Mr. President of Ukraine, first of all, let me thank you for organizing this important summit. I would like to briefly focus on 4 points. First, international law and UN Charter must be the backbone for a just peace in Ukraine. No matter our continent, history, religion, or skin color, we all share the same guiding compass, and this is the UN Charter and its principles of sovereignty, territorial integrity, human dignity, and the right to self-defense. These principles are universal, and we must uphold them. Second point, this war has one aggressor, and this is Russia, and one victim, the people of Ukraine. And the people of Ukraine, they have the right to defend their children, their homes, and their communities. And it is our collective duty to protect a world based on laws that govern how countries should live together. This full-scale war is more than an attack on the security of Europe, on the idea of Europe. This is an attempt to drag us all back to a darker past, a world of nuclear confrontation, dramatic food insecurity with economic consequences. This war is an odious attempt to replace the force of law with the law of force, and we cannot give up. Russia's threats to use nuclear weapons are completely unacceptable and irresponsible. Russia's reckless actions are driving up the risk of a nuclear incident with consequences for the entire world, and that's why the EU strongly supports the work of the IAEA, Director General Grossi and staff on the ground. Third point, let's be absolutely clear. There is no room for double standards. International law must be protected always and everywhere without any ambiguity, in Ukraine, in the Middle East, and everywhere in the world. This is our global responsibility. Lastly, a word about the future. Peace requires dialogue. Any future dialogue with Russia must be based on international law and the UN Charter, and it's up to Ukraine to decide when it may be possible. This war is a direct attack on the global rules-based order. We need a global response. We all have a choice to make. Don't we let the world slide backward, or do we stand strong and go forward towards international law, fundamental principles, and UN Charter? We made our choice. The future is up to us. You can count on the EU. Slava Ukraini.
Thank you, Mr. President. May I now give the floor to the President of Chile, Gabriel Boric.
Thank you very much,
dear members of this summit. International stability and peaceful coexistence are, of course, essential for democracy and the sustainable development of nations. Chile, our country, is committed to the respect of territorial sovereignty. We firmly oppose the use or threat of force, and we believe that diplomacy and international law are the only legitimate means for resolving disputes. Consequently, Chile has persistently and vocally condemned Russia's war of aggression against Ukraine. We have advocated for the respect of human rights and Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity, which are essential components of any lasting solution to this conflict. We strongly believe that the situation represents a serious violation of international law and human rights. These same principles, we must say, that are being disregarded by the Israeli government in Gaza. In the face of these blatant violations of international law, as Charles Michel just said, there's no room for ambiguity or indifference. We value the proposal circled for a joint declaration. It is significant that we reach certain commitments that allow us to lessen the effects and risk of war at this stage. We must be capable of bringing positions closer, no matter how difficult it may seem today, and that supposes bringing Russia to the table. In this regard, I want to highlight the importance we give to the protection of Ukrainian nuclear facilities, as they are a key element of international well-being. Likewise, we must rule out the use of nuclear weapons, as many of you have said, because we know they constitute a risk of incalculable consequences for all humanity. It is also essential to ensure Ukraine's maritime sovereignty and food security, which implies allowing the free circulation of food and other products to and from Ukraine, because hunger must never be used as a weapon of war, not here, not in Gaza, nor in any conflict in the world. In addition, it's urgent to promote humanitarian measures such as the release of all prisoners of war, both Russian and Ukrainian. And more so, we need to ensure the protection of Ukrainian children who have been forcibly displaced or illegally transferred to Russia. It is necessary to commit the entire international community on that. Finally, I would like to reaffirm my country's offer to contribute to humanitarian demining in Ukraine at the post-conflict stage. Dear heads of state, why a country that is so far away from this war as Chile is participating in this summit? It is not because we don't like Putin, which personally I don't, or because we have sympathy for Mr. Zelensky. It is not because we support NATO ampliation to the east, or because we are part of one or other geopolitical coalition puzzle. It's because we, as a small country in the south of the world with our 20 million inhabitants, are aware that only the respect of international law and human rights can guarantee peace. The same applies to the conflict on Gaza. We do not accept to choose between the barbarism of Hamas or the massacre that the Israeli government, led by the war criminal Mr. Netanyahu, is doing nowadays. We choose humanity and the civilizatory advances that we together as United Nations have achieved. Today is Ukraine and Palestine, tomorrow could be any one of us. So let's keep on working together for peace. Thank you.
Mr. President, thank you very much. As next speaker, may I call the President of Poland, Andrzej Duda.
Thank you very much. Excellencies, hosts, organizers, and participants of this summit. In a few days, Russian illegal and unprovoked aggression on Ukraine will have lasted 28 months. It has been 2.5 years of war crimes and crimes against humanity committed by the Russian regime and the Russian army all over Ukraine. This war is not only brutal and full of crimes. It is imperial and colonial in its nature. The Kremlin intends to enslave the Ukrainian people, their children, use Ukraine's resources, destroy their culture, and deprive Ukraine of the right to freely choose its development path and security arrangements. In the part of the world which I represent, Russia is often called the prison of nations, and for good reason, because it is home to almost 200 ethnic groups, most of which became residents of Russia as a result of the methods used in Ukraine today. Russia remains the largest colonial empire in a world which, unlike European powers, has never undergone the process of decolonization and has never been able to deal with the demons of its past. As members of the international community, we have to finally say there is no more space for colonialism in the modern world. I want to state clearly, it is solely Moscow who is responsible for the war, but it does not mean that Russia is acting alone. I'm referring here to the shameful role that Putin's puppet in Belarus, Alexander Lukashenko, has played in this war while oppressing his own people. I want to remind everyone that not only did he allow the Russian army to attack Ukraine from the territory of Belarus, but he also initiated a series of hybrid attacks against the Baltic states and Poland's eastern borders, attacks which have lasted for 3 years. Ladies and gentlemen, Ukraine, as a victim of a full-scale military aggression, has the full right to defend its sovereignty and independence by any means that are in accordance with the international law. And it is the obligation of the entire international society to spare no efforts in supporting Kyiv in its struggles. The peace agreement that will eventually be worked out has to ensure the sovereignty of Ukraine, full practical capabilities to defend its independence, as well as free and unimpeded right to shape its internal and foreign policies without Moscow's influence. Excellencies, the road to achieving lasting peace will be long and full of challenges. I appreciate the decision of organizers of this event to focus on less controversial issues. I hope that the progress made in those areas will allow us to further pressure the Kremlin to stop the aggression and withdraw its forces from Ukraine in its internationally recognized borders. The success of this initiative depends on bringing on board a vast representation of UN members and supporting the UN Charter. Only with broad international support and comprehensive consultations can we work out a basis for the future peace agreement. This also could and should serve as a universal basis for peace agreements in other conflicts. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. And now it's my pleasure to hand over the floor to the President of Moldova, Maia Sandu.
Distinguished audience, we're here today to talk peace. We all want peace, but what truly defines peace? We know for sure what peace is not. Peace is not capitulation to the aggressor. Occupation of parts or entire countries is not peace and can never be the foundation for peace. Does anyone here at this table believe that giving up parts of your countries can truly bring about lasting peace? Peace must be defended by all of us. We must forge a world that is strong and cohesive and that actively supports nations like Ukraine in their quest for peace and security. Today, I stand before you to reaffirm Moldova's unshaken commitment to the restoration of peace in Ukraine and in Europe, a peace that respects Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity. We might have limited resources, but we have a strong desire to help. Moldova has taken important steps in line with Ukraine's peace formula. On food security, we facilitate grain exports from Ukraine to global markets, particularly important for countries where food security remains a pressing concern. On humanitarian measures, we have welcomed hundreds of thousands of refugees and joined international efforts to free abducted Ukrainian children. On justice, we have joined the Council of Europe's Registry of Damages to ensure Russia pays reparations. Equally important, we're building resilience so that we can preserve stability at home and be a strong and supportive neighbor to Ukraine, with whom we share 1,200 kilometers of border. Our own journey, however, is not without challenges. Hybrid attacks, coordinated by Russia and its proxies, continue to test us, attempting to undermine our democracy and interfere with our sovereign choices in the upcoming elections. But we have never been more determined to prevail. We understand the stakes at hand: our peace, our freedom, the future of our children. Ladies and gentlemen, peace cannot be bottled within borders. It must be fostered and spread. Therefore, the enlargement of the European Union, a fundamentally peace project, is the best investment in lasting peace and stability on the European continent. In closing, let me be clear. Ukraine's peace is Moldova's peace. And in this interconnected world, global peace cannot exist without it. Only by standing together across continents can we secure a peaceful future for all. Slava Ukraini!
Thank you, Madam President. May I now request the President of Finland, Alexander Stubb, to share his view.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen. In order to stick to my 3 minutes, I'll make 3 quick points. The first one is that I think there are quite a few cynical people outside of this hall and thinking, is there any point in having a summit on peace? And to them, I think the simple answer is to say that, as a matter of fact, if you don't talk about peace, you can't achieve it. And the mere fact that we have 60 heads of state government here, that we have 100 countries, I think is an achievement in and of itself. And I think for us in the global West, it's very important to listen to the voices that we've heard here today. I listened attentively to the President of Kenya, President of Ghana and Chile, Prime Minister of Qatar, and the Foreign Minister of South Africa. There are wars waging around the world, and they call for peace as much as this one. Now, for those who don't come from next to Russia, you must also understand that a lot of us are worried. We have 1,300 kilometers of border with Russia. Since the 1300s, we've had over 30 wars and skirmishes with Russia. Russia invaded Finland in World War II. We lost 10% of our territory, including the land where my grandparents were born and where my father was born. This is why the reaction from our side has been so vehement. My second point is that I actually think this has been a good week for peace. Why? Because of this summit, because of the G7 summit, because the EU negotiations for Ukraine started this week, and because of the support that our NATO allies are giving to Ukraine. So I think that Ukraine actually starts this path towards peace from a position of strength, much stronger than what it was 3 weeks ago, let alone 3 months ago. My third and final point is when we talk about peace, it's important to talk about the nature of peace. And here's where I think it's very important to listen to not only President Zelensky, but all of those who say that this has to be a just and sustainable peace, which is based on international law and the UN Charter. It also means that we need to have a follow-up to this meeting as soon as possible, because peace is very rarely an end state. It's always a process. And let me finish off by saying what my predecessor and mentor, President Ahtisaari, once said: what humans begin, humans can also end. So I hope that this summit will be the first step in the path towards peace. Thank you for the invitation, and Slava Ukraini.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Let me now hand over the floor to the President of Argentina, Javier Milei. The floor is yours.
Buenas tardes a todos. Es un honor para mí y para la Argentina participar de esta cumbre por la paz organizada por el presidente Zelensky, con quien hemos entablado un estrecho vínculo. Los argentinos tenemos plena conciencia del valor de la paz y la convivencia democrática como ejes rectores de la vida en sociedad, y por eso quiero agradecer especialmente la invitación a este evento. Quiero expresar, en nombre del pueblo argentino, nuestro máximo apoyo al pueblo de Ucrania y a nuestro amigo el presidente Zelensky, ya que como defensores de la idea de la libertad, repudiamos cualquier forma de violencia, ya sea entre individuos, pero en particular repudiamos la guerra como mecanismo ilegítimo para dirimir los conflictos entre naciones. La guerra, trágica por naturaleza, no puede ser nunca la respuesta a problemas que deben saldarse en la esfera política. La guerra no es una herramienta legítima para resolver conflictos. La guerra es el último recurso de un pueblo que debe defenderse, nada más ni nada menos. Nosotros somos defensores de la idea de la libertad. El liberalismo, como lo entendemos nosotros, es el respeto irrestricto del proyecto de vida del prójimo, basado en el principio de no agresión, en defensa del derecho a la vida, la libertad y la propiedad privada. Como defensores de la libertad, no podemos abogar por otra cosa más que la paz entre los pueblos y las naciones libres. Cuando nosotros decimos que el principio ordenador de nuestra doctrina es la defensa de la vida, de la libertad y la propiedad de los individuos, lo que estamos diciendo es que hay una relación directa entre la paz, el comercio y la prosperidad. No hay prosperidad económica sin comercio libre, y no hay comercio libre si no hay paz. Y el comercio libre naturalmente pacifica, porque como decía Bastiat, donde entra el comercio no entran las balas. O como decía el propio Milton Friedman, yo puedo odiar a mi vecino, pero si no me compra mi producto, voy a la quiebra. Como soy un ferviente creyente en la conciencia filosófica que hay en el liberalismo y la paz, hago hoy este breve alegato en su defensa, ya que estas ideas parecen haber pasado de moda. Creo que es un paso importante para la Argentina poder hacernos presentes primero en la cumbre del G7 y luego aquí en esta cumbre por la paz, y es parte del gran giro que estamos dando como país luego de décadas de darle la espalda al mundo. Hay una nueva Argentina que abraza una vez más las ideas que hace 150 años la convirtieron en uno de los países más prósperos del mundo. Y hay una nueva Argentina que busca también recuperar el lugar protagónico en el concierto de las naciones que alguna vez tuvo y que nunca debería haber abandonado. Sepan que la Argentina estará siempre comprometida con la defensa de las ideas que hicieron grande a Occidente y que para nosotros la paz entre las naciones libres no solo es un deber moral, sino la condición necesaria para la prosperidad. Muchas gracias a todos.
Mr. President, thank you very much. As next speaker, may I call the Prime Minister of Denmark, Mette Frederiksen.
Dear colleagues, thank you very much for hosting this important meeting. A year ago, the national security advisors from 14 very different countries met in Copenhagen for a first discussion on how we could advance peace in Ukraine. And today, more than 100 countries and organizations are in this room. I think it shows a very strong and united wish for universal peace and stability. Of course, also for Ukrainians. They have now been under attack for almost 2.5 years, and the widespread global consequences of the war are well known. Russia's continued and relentless attacks against Ukraine's cities and people show how far we are from peace today. Yet we stand strong. We gather here today around a shared understanding and a shared fundamental commitment to the UN Charter and international law, to the principles of sovereignty, independence, and territorial integrity. This is our baseline, and it has to be our baseline for our path towards peace. If we do not stand up for these principles, then what are we all worth? We cannot accept a world where borders can be changed by military force, where the aggressor sets the rules. We have a special responsibility and we have a common interest to support a solution to the war in Ukraine, a comprehensive, just and lasting peace for Ukraine. And by being here today, we have taken that responsibility upon us. As we meet today, we also take good note that concrete progress has been achieved in some key issues: nuclear safety, ensuring reliable export of grain to global markets, and bringing unlawfully deported Ukrainians back home safely. These are not small steps. They make a big difference for many affected all around the world. And these steps must pave the way for concrete results in other areas. I think all of us knows that it's not simple to achieve just and sustainable peace, especially because Russia do not want peace. Not in Ukraine, not in neighboring countries, not in the Sahel region, not in Middle East. And therefore, thank you for inviting us today. We have to continue to talk to each other. We have to listen across continents to find the concrete solutions and to move forward together. Thank you.
Thank you, Prime Minister. And now it's my pleasure to invite the Prime Minister of Estonia, Kaja Kallas, to make her intervention.
Thank you. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the outcome of Russia's aggression against Ukraine will have a profound effect, not only on the European, but also global security architecture. Principles such as sovereignty, territorial integrity, discrediting aggression as a tool of statecraft are the most important elements. They must, at all costs, be preserved. Hence, it is critical that these principles are also upheld in case of Ukraine. That is why I'm concerned to hear about the so-called peace plans or initiatives that don't even mention these principles. These are the core principles of the UN Charter, the principles that form the basis for securing peace globally. We should be very careful not to leave an impression that some topics and principles, such as especially Ukraine's territorial integrity, are somehow secondary to others. They clearly are not. Upholding these principles is the most important way towards a just and lasting peace. They must be at the core of any future peace framework. The Russian war of aggression against Ukraine has lasted for 10 years. For the bigger part of it, the world has ignored it. There was hope back then, and some are also hoping now, that territorial concessions to the aggressor would bring peace. This logic echoes the appeasement policies of the 1930s. However, rather than securing peace, the Munich Agreement emboldened Hitler, leading to further aggression and eventually the Second World War. History has proved that giving up territory for peace has too often led and will lead to further aggressions. To achieve peace, we will have to learn from our own mistakes. Failure to do so would bring a colossal cost in human lives across the globe. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, many countries have suffered under colonial wars. So has mine. I know that Russia isn't typically thought as colonial power. Estonia, my own country, went through Russia's colonization and occupation for almost half a century, up until 1991. I grew up during the last part of that time. My own mother, forcefully deported to Siberia as a baby, has suffered from war crimes that Russia inflicted upon far too many. In theory, it was called peace, but it was peace on Russian terms, meaning mass atrocities, meaning repressions, meaning colonization. So witnessing the continuation of Russia's colonialistic land grab policy today in Ukraine is a heartbreaking reminder of how history can repeat itself. I really hope this time we are able to learn from our past mistakes. Thank you.
Thank you, Prime Minister Kallas. May I pass the floor to the Minister for Foreign Affairs of Turkey, Mr. Hakan Fidan.
Esteemed Presidents, Prime Ministers, Excellencies, at the outset, let me thank our host for bringing us together, President Amherd and President Zelensky. For more than 2 years now, a devastating war is unfolding in the middle of Europe as a result of occupation of Ukraine. According to some estimates, the number of casualties is more than 500,000, and the war has already turned into a war of attrition. With each passing day, this tragedy could even get worse. Therefore, the timing of this peace conference couldn't be better. As the war goes on, we are running the escalation of two major risks. Geographically, this war can extend beyond Ukraine. We are already seeing deepening fault lines and fueling polarization at global levels. It is increasingly becoming a war more than between Russia and Ukraine. Secondly, this destructive conventional war has the inherent risk of involving the weapons of mass destruction. Today, we are here to try to avoid these two risks and put an end to war. We have the Ukrainian peace plan in front of us, and Russia has recently shared some terms. Regardless of the content and the conditions put forward, these are important steps and a glimpse of hope to start with. However, each side regards the other party's steps as an extension of broader war effort. This conference, therefore, may be the last exit before the breach. Excellencies, I must also note that this summit could have been more result-oriented if the other party to the conflict, Russia, was present in the room. We believe there is a growing need for a comprehensive and inclusive strategy that employs diplomacy and negotiations to reinforce measures already in play. From the beginning, Turkey has been actively engaging in diplomatic efforts. The Istanbul talks of March 2022 and the Black Sea Grain Initiative were signs that diplomacy and negotiations can really bring progress. Turkey is, as always, ready to facilitate the process. Let me underline one point here. What made the grain initiative successful and unique was its inclusive nature. It provided predictability to both sides and ensured navigation safety for the maritime exports. There is much to be learned from this example. Our most recent attempt to introduce a similar mechanism almost delivered a positive outcome. We will not shy away from putting further efforts. Turkey is staunch in its support for Ukraine's territorial integrity, sovereignty, and independence. Our vision for peace is realistic, inclusive, and practical. We are committed to crafting a way forward to that end. As President Erdogan pointed out, a fair peace will have no losers. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister Fidan. I have now the honor to pass on the Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Minister of Italy, Antonio Tajani.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Thank you for hosting us today here. The position of the Italian government is clear.
As the G7 president, Italy wants to keep Ukraine at the center of this national and international agenda. Our political goal is a just peace. We are not at war with Russia, but unfortunately, there are not signs of goods from Putin to achieve peace. In fact, this war could end any moment if Russia puts an end to its aggression against Ukraine and restore Ukraine's territorial integrity. A just peace cannot imply surrender of Ukraine and continued occupation of its territory by Russia. It takes to make peace. This summit is a call for a peace based on justice and principles. The Italian president of the G7 has three clear priorities: peace, stability, and growth. Italy is at the forefront in the reconstruction effort. This week in Berlin, we announced a new important initiative in the health sector, energy infrastructure, connectivity, particularly transportation in the railway sector, and culture. Special attention will go to humanitarian demining. I signed with Minister for Communities Skurakov a new memorandum to strengthen the reconstruction of Odessa. Italy will host the next conference for the reconstruction of a country in 2025. Today, we are also to work together on three key areas for the future of Ukraine: nuclear safety, food security, and release of prisoners of war, and the repatriation of deported Ukrainian children. This is an important point for us. Italy gives an important contribution in all these sectors. We will continue to do so. On nuclear safety, Italy firmly supports the International Atomic Energy Agency and the action led by its Director General Grossi. Food security is a key priority for the Italian government and of our G7 presidency. At the G7 summit in Borgo Egnazia, we adopted the Apulia Food System Initiative to work on concrete objectives. Food security will be at the center of the G7 Development Ministerial meeting I will host in Pescara in October. We stress our full support to the program Grain from Ukraine, and we support the strengthening of Ukrainian agri-food system. It has been very positive in this context, the role played by Turkey. In this respect, we value the importance of free and safe commercial navigation. The protection of children is the most important priority. Always from Gaza to Haiti to Ukraine, in the spirit of the initiative led by the Vatican. From everywhere, we welcome in Italy young children, we provide medical support, we help them as much as we can. For this, Mr. Zelensky, count on Italy. We are ready for working for your country, in defense of your country. We are ready also for sending a new military package, because without our defense, it's impossible also to work for the reconstruction tomorrow. For this, we want to stop this difficult situation. Count on us, count on Italy.
Thank you, Deputy Prime Minister. And finally, it is my pleasure to hand over the floor to the President of France, Emmanuel Macron.
Thank you, Ignacio, Mr. Chairman. Mr. President, dear Volodymyr, dear colleagues, ministers, I think there is a lot of convergence, which is not a big surprise around this table today. But just three remarks completely in line with what was said and try to gather the key ideas. First, all of us are committed to build a sustainable peace. And as it was mentioned by several of you, such a peace could not be a Ukrainian capitulation. This is why the precondition is to help Ukraine to resist in such a situation to this aggression, because there is one aggressor and a victim. Second, it's clearly to reiterate the fact that nobody in this room is in war against Russia. But everybody wants a sustainable peace, meaning a peace respecting international rule and restoring Ukraine in its sovereignty. Second, this war is a global issue. And I think such a gathering, and I want to congratulate your presidency, is the best evidence of the fact that from all continents, people are here to support peace in Ukraine. Because what is at stake are our international rules and the possibility to have peace everywhere. Because in launching this war, Russia decided first to be an imperialist regime. So we have to strengthen the fundamental principle of the UN Charter and international law in order to make borders and sovereignty being respected. Second, Russia decided to be a revisionist power because we have to avoid the resumption of war everywhere where a power wants to revise recent treaties and to justify an annexion or an aggression by what the world was in the 19th or 18th century. Because just let's imagine once again for all of us around this table what would happen, but this is exactly what they are doing. So in such a context, this is a global issue for these reasons. On top of that, this war clearly affected all continents and global order because of the fact that our rules and our UN Charter is not respected, but because of the consequence of on food and stability and so on. My third point is that precisely this summit is a milestone to reiterate our attachment to the core principles of our international laws. And through the draft communiqué and remarks made by colleagues, nuclear safety and security, food security, humanitarian issues are three pillars where, through this conference, we gather leaders and countries from all the world in order to reiterate our view. I want to insist on the fact that now one of the key priorities clearly to secure the situation around Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant and not to accept any complacency vis-à-vis the attacks targeting civilian targets and infrastructures as well in Ukraine. These are war crimes and are clearly a top priority in this moment, and I want as well to support fully the role of the International Agency for Atomic Energy. My last point is on top of all this initiative, a lot of leaders mention follow-ups. We will have the resolution adopted by the United Nations General Assembly on the Olympic truce. We don't see this truce as an obligation vis-à-vis Ukraine, and I want to be clear here, and I was clear with President Zelensky. This is clearly a call for Russia to cease its war of aggression and its attacks on civilians and civilian facilities. And a lot of religious leaders are taking very important initiatives in parallel. And I think increasing the pressure in this context to have a truce on the Russian side is extremely important. I suggest that in parallel, we build all together a follow-up in order to enlarge the circle of countries joining our efforts, to avoid the big divide of the world, and to avoid, I would say, the temptation of other initiatives, and not to compete in terms of initiative, but just to have a follow-up, adding countries and not dividing the circle, and clearly to build what should be a set of key requirements of the global community that we could put on the table vis-à-vis Russia. And I think this is the best way to help Ukraine to build the framework of a sustainable peace, meaning a peace respecting international order. So I think it would be great if, right after this initiative and this summit hosted by Switzerland, all of us coordinate in order to increase the outreach and work in that direction. I want once again, dear Ignacio, dear Viola, to thank you for this great initiative and obviously to reiterate our full support to President Zelensky and the Ukrainian people.
Monsieur le Président, thank you very much. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, please let me thank you all for this rich discussion. The head of protocol will now inform us how we proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Cassis. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I kindly ask now all heads of delegation and heads of delegation only to stand up and proceed to that door, the main door of the room, and follow the liaison officer to the site of the family photo. Please, all other delegates remain seated until we are gone. Otherwise, it's going to be a chaos. So please, only heads of delegation.